Again, it's a redskin.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back. In this video we're going to build a simple Python application for testing our typing speed. So we're going to have a graphical user interface where we're going to have some sample text as a label. So for example, something like this is my text. Please type it fast, some sample text like that. And then we're going to have a text field down below in which we can enter this is my text. Please type it fast, and then a timer in the background is going to run, and our script will tell us how fast we wrote this, for example, with words per minute or with characters per minute or something like that. This is what we're going to build. We're going to do this using tkinter. I have prepared the code already, so I'm going to take a look at my second screen a couple of times to remember what exactly I wrote. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to import tkinter as tk. This is very important. We need to import time as well. We need to import threading because, of course, we don't want the same thread that is responsible for managing the graphical user interface to be also managing the time, because then, you know, it will lag all the time. When we try to press buttons, for example, or when we move the window, the timer is just going to freeze. This is not what we want. And we also want to import random because we want to choose a random text from a collection. So the actual graphical user interface will be part of a class because, as I mentioned in a lot of previous videos already, when you have a graphical user interface with functions and UI elements that access these functions and these functions accessing the UI elements as well, you want this to be in one object, because otherwise you have to think, okay, which one do I have to define first, because the function refers to a UI element, but then a UI element refers to the function and so on. It's just easier to do it in a class. So type speed GUI is going to be our class. We're going to have a simple constructor in which we're just going to say self.root is going to be tk.tk. Oh, I think Copilot is active. Okay, I'm going to leave Copilot active. Don't be confused by that. It's basically just going to suggest some code pieces. Besides that, we're going to say self.root .title typing speed application. There you go. Then self.root.geometry, and we're going to go with 800 times 600, which is, yeah, fine, I guess. So what we want to have in this window is we want to have a label with the sample text. We want to have a text box where we can just write. And I think that's actually all we want to have. I mean, then we also want to have a speed label, which shows us the typing speed. And we want to have a reset button so that we can start from scratch and get a new text. So the first thing is we want to have the label. We're going to call this sample label. And it's going to be a tk.label. We're passing self.root here as the parent object, and we're passing some sample text here. Now, what we want to do actually here is we want to have a collection of text. So we're going to create a new file here in the same directory that our script is located in. A new text file, and we're going to call this texts.txt. And here you can, generate some sentences. For example, please subscribe to Neural 9. You will learn a lot, for example. Or, what is up? Can you type this fast enough? You can just generate some sentences. We're going to have the new line character as a separator. So, I don't know, let's go with this is another sentence that you need to type fast. Hello world, this text is pretty useless. And then one more. Python is awesome. C is okay, but don't get me started on MATLAB. That is fine. All right, so we have a text file separated by new line characters. The individual sentences are separated by new line characters. So what we're going to do is we're going to say self.text is going to be open. We're going to open text.txt in reading mode, and we're going to read. Actually, I don't want to use read lines. I want to use read, and then I want to split on. \n like that. Come on. There you go. So now we have the text, and instead of loading the sample text here, we're just going to start with a random text already. So random.choice self.texts, like that. Which means that when we generate our label, when we put our label into the GUI, it's already going to have one of the sentences in there. And we of course want to say self.sample label, and we want to put this into a grid layout. And it's going to be row 0, column span 2, and we also want to add some padding x being equal to 5 and some padding y being equal to 5 as well. All right, so after that, we want to have an input entry. So we want to have some entry where we can put the text where we type. So this is going to be self input entry. It's going to be tk entry, part of self root. Now for the width, we're going to go with 40. We want this to be quite large, and we're going to also set a font. The font is going to be, actually we didn't set a font for the label though, right? So the label should be should have a different font. I mean, not font family, but it should have a different font size because we want to see much more of the text here. So we're going to go with 18. And for the input entry, we're going to choose a larger font size. So we're going to go with 24. And I think that is actually, yeah, that's actually it. Then we're going to say self.inputEntry.grid. We're going to place this as row 1, column 0, and the column span is going to be 2 again. Padding is going to be here again. Now, I think that it's important to set the Y padding to a bit more because otherwise it's going to look quite narrow. So we're going to go with 10 for the Y padding, and we're going to keep the X padding at 5. After that, we want to have the typing speed indicator, and we want to have also the reset button. So I'm going to copy this one here. We're going to rename sample label to speed label. Speed label, like that. So here the text is going to be the typing speed. Now, by default, this is going to just be the template. So it's going to be speed, colon, and it's going to be, I mean, I actually want to have a new line here, and we're going to say 0.00 characters. Actually, do we want to go with characters or with words? Now, in the prepared script, I did the characters, but I think we can also go with words. That's probably more interesting, but then again, no, let's go with characters for now. So let's go with characters per second, and then 0.00 characters per minute. Now, maybe we can do also words later on, but we're going to do it first with characters. So yeah, that's the default, just 0 because we haven't started yet. We can also go with a hyphen or something. And we're going to place this in row 2, obviously. It's going to also have a column span of 2, also padding. And last but not least, sorry, we need the reset button. So the reset button is going to be tk.button, part of self root. It's going to have the text reset, and it's going to call the reset function we don't have yet. We're going to implement it. And we're going to say self.resetButton.grid row 3, column 2, column span. We also want to have a column span of 2 here. And the rest is fine. What we also want to do is we want to trigger the start of the timer when we type something into that input entry. So what we want to do is we want to say self-input-entry.bind, and we're going to bind a key down. I think that's what the event is called. We're going to bind this key down event to self.start, which is a function that we need to implement. Once we have all that, or actually for the graphical user interface, what we want to do is we want to create, first of all, a frame. So self frame is going to be tk frame, and then instead of putting this to root, we're going to put this to the frame. So maybe let's just automate this. We're going to go to the beginning, change 2 words. No, okay, change 3 words, I guess. And then we're going to say self.frame, or actually we only need to change the root, right, to frame. So there you go, there you go. All right, and then we need to, of course, say self.frame, and the frame is going to be packed, and it's going to have expand equals to true. Otherwise, it's just going to be very small. By doing that, we make it responsive and larger. So once we have that, we're going to say self.main loop, and we're going to have a bunch of additional, or actually self-root main loop, and we're going to have a bunch of additional things. For example, we're going to need a counter to see how many seconds have passed or milliseconds have passed. And we're also going to need a boolean for whether the thing started or not. So we're going to define it actually down here. So self counter is going to be 0, and self.started is going to be false by default. Now we can start with the individual functions here. Now what we want to have is we want to have a start function. We want to have a reset function. And remember that we want to start this in a separate thread. So this is why we imported threading. So the threading for the task of timing should be run in a second thread. So we're going to have actually another function here, which is going to be started by the start function. And this is going to be the time thread, like that. All right. So the time thread itself is quite simple. We're going to say while self.started. You can also call this running if you want to. Maybe that's more accurate. Let's call this running. Self.running equals false while self.running. What we want to do is we want to say self.counter plus equals not 1, but 0.1, because we want to have a little bit more granularity in there. And we want to say time.sleep 0.1. And what we want to do else is we want to calculate the characters per second. This is just going to be the counter divided by, actually it's going to be not counter, it's going to be the length. So the characters per second is actually the length of what we have in the input entry already divided by the counter. So the amount of characters that we have in the input entry, which we get by get and then taking the length of the text, divided by the amount of seconds passed. So this is how you get the CPS in this case. And the CPM is going to just be the CPS times 60. Yeah, that's basically it. And of course, what we want to do is we want to set the speed label config. There you go. We get, oh, this is already a pretty damn good suggestion of GitHub Copilot. So let's take it. It's self-speedlabel.config. So this is how you change the text. You set the text to, and we set it to the speed. Actually, let me just change one thing here, because I don't want to use format. I want to use an F string. So we're going to go here with CPS and CPM. Essentially what we're doing is we're saying speed equals CPS with 2 decimal places, CPM with 2 decimal places. Yeah, that's the string that we want to have. So this is the timing thread. Of course, if we set this to false, this is now going to terminate and we're done. So for the start, when we start something, remember when we type something into the input entry, we trigger the start function. So what we want to do is, first of all, I want to know if not self.running. So if it's already running, I don't need to start it. I only want to start it if it's running. I also don't want to start it when I press some function key, not function key, some modifier like shift or control, for example, because I don't want to be in the text field, maybe pressing shift, not having started to write and the counter is already running. So I don't want to do that. Because of that, I'm going to check if I have this, if one of these buttons is pressed. So I'm going to do that by saying if not. Oh, by the way, we need to pass an event here, because when we bind key down to self-start, it's going to pass an event as well. So which key was pressed. And we want to say if not event dot key code in, and now you have to Google this, but what we want to check for is 16, 17, and 18. Those are, I don't know in what order, but those are Shift, Alt, and Control. So if the key pressed is not one of those keys, what we're going to do is we're going to set self-started, or self-running in this case, to true, and we're going to say t equals threading, a new thread with the run function, not the run function, the time thread function as a target here, and we want to start this. So essentially all we're doing is we're checking, okay, are we already running? No. Okay, then is the key pressed some modifier key? You can of course add more keys here if you want to. If not, start this thing and set running to true. So it's going to start that function here. And otherwise, if we type something and we have already started, we also want to see if the text is correct. So if we're typing something that's not correct, of course, we don't have a good typing speed because I can, spam my keyboard and I'm not necessarily having a good typing speed. So we want to say if not self.sample label dot cget text, so we get the text from the typing label. If that thing is not equal to what we have in the input entry get, then we want to color this text in red color. So we want to say self.input entry.config, and the foreground is going to be red. So FG is going to be red. Then otherwise, we're going to set it to black, because when we set it to red once and it was wrong once, we want to have it back to the normal color when it's correct again. So we're going to set this to black here. And the last thing we want to check is if self input entry dot get is the same as the label. What we want to do is we want to stop. So we want to set self dot running to false. Now maybe you want to also color this in green if you want to. I don't know. The thing is, you want to stop this when we have the correct text, because the timer has to now evaluate. Because we don't have to write anything. Now, when I tested this in the prepared code, the problem was that it didn't look for the full string. So it always had, I think, an additional space in the end. So what I did, I don't know if that's the most best practice way to solve this, but what I did is I said, okay, it doesn't have to be the same thing. It has to be the same except for the last character, because it somehow added an additional character. And this then works. So last but not least, of course, once we have this, I mean, actually, we can already try this without the reset functionality. So I can actually go ahead and say, what did we call this? Actually, type speed GUI, right? I think if we didn't make any mistakes, we should already be able to do the basic typing. The basic typing, we did make a mistake. Key down is not an event. Oh, it's not key down, it's key press. Sorry about that. There you go. So now this is another sentence that you need to type fast. There you go. Now the problem is that it was red all the time because I think I didn't do the right check, because we don't want to say if it's not the same. That's nonsense. We want to say starts with. Like that. So otherwise it's going to just wait for the full text to be correct. So now if I go ahead and say please, you can see it's fine, but if I type some nonsense, it's turning red. Then it is fine again. Subscribe to neural9. You will learn a lot. Period. There you go, my typing speed. Now the reset doesn't work yet. By the way, we can also let's do that afterwards. We can also try to calculate the words per second and per minute. Now the reset is going to be quite simple. All we need to do here is we need to reset everything to the beginning. So self-running is obviously going to be false. Self.counter is going to be 0 again. Self.speed label. Actually, we can... Where is this? Where is the default text? There you go. We're going to copy the inner quotations, and we're going to say config text equals, and then that. And then we're going to say self.sample label config is going to be another random choice from the text, which of course can be the same text. It's not guaranteed that it won't be the same text. We can check for that if we want to. And then we're going to say self.input entry. We want to delete everything like that. Delete from 0 to tk end. All right. that is essentially it. Now it should work. We only need to add the words per minute. So if I type some nonsense, whatever, I delete it again, then I reset. You can see resetting gives me a new text. It also deletes whatever is there. It resets all the timers. So now if I press Shift, Alt, Control, whatever, doesn't really matter. So if I type, it starts from scratch. Let's see, this is another sentence that you need to type. Come on, fast. There you go. And now we can go and calculate the words per minute. Now, I haven't done that in my prepared example, but it shouldn't be too difficult because all we need to do is we need to split on the blanks, and then we just have to count, basically. So let's add words per second. It's going to be the length of self dot input entry dot get dot split on that divided by self counter, and then it's just going to be times 60 again. So we just need to add a couple more things here. We need to add another \n. Then words per second is going to be actually words per second, 2 decimal places, words per second, \n, and then we don't actually need the space here. Then words per minute, 2 decimal places, words per minute, like that. And of course, we should have this by default as well. So here, 0 words per minute or words per second, 0 words per second. Now let's copy that and go up here. Where is this? Then let's do that. And that should be it. Now it should work. Let's see. Please subscribe to Neural 9. You will learn a lot. Almost 80 words per minute. I think that's pretty average. I'm not sure. I'm not using a 10-finger system. Maybe I would be faster if I was doing that. Now, I just noticed that the font of the button doesn't look very good. So let's change that real quick, and then we're done, I guess. So the font of the button is just going to be, let's go with 24 as well. Shouldn't be too ugly. There you go. Now let's go with a different text here. This is another sentence that you need to type fast. Oh, this was a mistake now, right? Okay, as you can see here, we have a problem because now the text is not correct, but it says it is correct. So I can type whatever nonsense I want. So let's see what the problem is here. We're saying it is green when we're done. It is green when we say that the input entry text is the same. Now let's delete that. Let's see if it still works. Oh, let's see if it still works. But I think we had a problem with that. I'm not sure, but I think we had a problem with that. This is another sentence that you need to type fast, period. Now, as you can see, I'm done, but it doesn't say I'm done. So if I type space, it works. I'm not sure why that is, but I think it works better if we just, maybe it's because, oh, I think it's because it doesn't trigger. Because I call the start function, and only when I type some more, it checks if it's true or not. Okay, I figured out a simple way to fix this. All we need to do is we need to change the key press event to a key release event, because then it evaluates the whole thing, not before I enter the letter, but afterwards. So if I now run this here, you will see what is up. Can you type this fast enough? Like that. And it's triggered when I release the key. So when I say question mark, it actually, before that, it pressed the key, it evaluated whether the sentence is full or not, and then it entered the key into the text box. Now what I'm doing is I'm entering the key into the text box first, and then I'm evaluating if I'm done. So as you can see, it works now. We have 108 words per minute. I think that's pretty good, but I can definitely speed that up by typing with 10 fingers. I'm typing with, I don't know, 3, 4, I'm not sure. Yeah, but that is how you build a simple type speed evaluating tool in Python. So that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed and hope you learned something. If so, let me know by hitting a like button and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to not miss a single future video for free. Other than that, thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video, and